I, th- I think there's and I think you're 100% right, Glenn. I just think there's this perception, or at least this idea that is constantly floated out that drives me nuts. That and I'm not pinpointing at you. We just happened to get into that Twitter spat. And look, whatever Nick was talking about, I'm guilty of it too. Like, I'm an imperfect person, so I'm not going to come on here and be like, oh,
we all are.
Shit, because I do. I'm a human, and that's human nature.
Right.
But I feel like there's this sense that these young wrestlers don't respect the older guys. Like, the Undertaker's comments, they did piss me off because I took it as the guys were soft. He did say the product, but then he did go to the video games, and then he did go and say, like, I liked it when men were men. And I'm like, why do you have to disrespect these younger guys who, when I was in the locker room, admired him, like, looked up to him to the utmost, like he's the godfather there. When he walks in, you're like, holy cow, that's the Undertaker. So to me, it's like, instead of going to these guys, explaining to them, like, hey, this is why I think you're soft, or this is why I think you need to do this, just to make a blanket statement across the board that all these guys are soft. Like, I'm sorry, I don't want to go back to the day as a recovering drug addict. I don't want to go back to the days when guys were popping pills and cheating on their wives and carrying guns in their bags. That doesn't sound like manly men to me. That sounds like insecure men. So, like, it does bother me to a sense when I see a lot of these younger guys coming up who are super respectful and super kind, and all they want to do is put on these amazing matches, and they actually look to these guys like, please help me. I don't see the disrespect. I don't understand it. And so
here's something I'll add to this too, because this is another thing I think gets overlooked a lot now, is that in that era, you didn't have the internet, in which people always think of the internet as this way for, like, fans to dictate, you know, how things should go, and for wrestlers to leak things to the sheets. But let me tell you something. The Office are the worst sheet leakers in the business. And don't let anybody tell you that it's wrestlers. Like, yeah, there are wrestlers doing it too, but it's the Office, okay? Because one of my key rules to life is, if people can't control you, they'll control the narrative about you instead, okay? And I've been subjected to it, like, several times. So when you get these, and this is where I agree with some of Mike's sentiment, in that you can't make these blanket statements about, like, oh, the guys need to stand up for themselves and the guys need to have more balls and be more ambitious and stuff. Because, hey, you know what happens to guys who stand up for themselves and talk back to the Office and stuff? They get labeled as, oh, he's problematic, he's a loudmouth, he doesn't have a good attitude. Because the guys in the Office are the biggest pussies in the business. They're the ones who are thin-skinned. They're the ones who have got, like, the biggest insecurities because they never did this, especially the ones who are, like, basically stooges, who's, like, their whole job is to basically prove that they need to be there. Like, there's a whole economy that exists in wrestling of people whose entire life is consumed with basically proving that the business needs them to exist, even though it doesn't. So they are constantly trying to minimize the contribution. Mike, how many times have you been told, hey, you don't get paid to write, you get paid to perform. You let us do it. No.
I want to ask Mike a